So good afternoon, everyone. And it's a beautiful day outside, so I thank you for taking time out to join the League of Women Voters. So I'm Linnell Philman. I'm the president of League of Women Voters here in Jacksonville, First Coast. And today we are going to hear from someone who is going to really enlighten us about what's been going on in the Florida legislature regarding some bills that have the ability to harm or help regarding education. So for those who've been watching the Florida legislative session, whether it's been live on the Florida channel, or maybe you're getting notifications from a lot of organizations like I know I am, it's really been a challenging and an emotional session. So again, our guest speaker is going to give us some insight into these specific bills today. So our guest speaker today is Michelle Dillon. Michelle is the president of the St. John's Education Association. She represents over 1,750 St. John's teachers and negotiates their wages and working conditions. So no small task there, especially considering the challenges that our teachers have been through the last 2 years. Michelle began her career in 2010 as a substitute and then became a pre-K paraprofessional and eventually a first grade teacher. So you'll fit in quite well here, Michelle. She was elected in 2015 as the union president and also sits on the Florida Education Association's executive cabinet. So having said that, welcome, Michelle, and I turn the Zoom floor over to you.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining me today. I truly appreciate it and very excited to be here with the League of Women Voters. I thank you for that introduction once again. And I am the current president of the St. John's Education Association, which is the teachers union for St. John's County. I am considered a teacher on assignment. So I don't work in the classroom, but I did teach pre-K and first grade. I am now outside the classroom and able to actively represent and advocate for our teachers. This is my 6th year serving as president. I love what I do. There is never a dull moment. So I'm happy to be here with you and talk about what's going on in the 2022 Florida legislative session. And once we talk about the hot topics in the legislative session, be happy to answer any of your questions or address any of your concerns. The first screen you see here, and thanks to my fabulous tech assistant, because I'm not good at screen sharing, I want everybody to take note of how to stay engaged with our teachers, our bus drivers, our custodians, and be active on our behalf. This shows our state union's website. Our state union is the Florida Education Association, and you can see the address there, feaweb.org. It is a great website, very user-friendly, and you'll see a tab there that says legislative session and take action. Anybody can go on this tab and find out what's moving through the House and Senate and how to speak up about it. This website gives you talking points. There's a spot that says find your legislator if you don't know who your legislator is, and just an easy way to stay engaged, and takes all of a couple minutes. So I encourage you to take note of that website, and we might return to the screen at the very end because you can help us speak up for education professionals. Next slide. So I'm sure you are familiar with these people, the players in power whose decisions affect everything we do in the classroom, from the textbooks we use to how much money we make. The governor, our commissioner, Richard Corcoran, and the Senate and House president. And we actively stay engaged with these folks and keep an open dialogue. We are always willing to meet with them. Our state union president is constantly meeting with Commissioner Corcoran to keep our issues at the very top of his list and on his radar. Next slide, please. So first, we're going to go through some of the Florida Education Association's priority bills, and you'll see them abbreviated as FEA. I tend to talk in acronyms a lot as an educator, so if there's any acronym that you don't understand, please chime in and let me know. So this is our state union and the priority bills that they're following. I'm not going to read these to you word by word, but just want you to take notes of what we support, oppose, and bills we are watching. So these are all the positive bills. Some deal with higher education, which is obviously not so much our focus here in St. John's. The one we are super excited about is the third one down, instructional personnel by Senator Jones and Representative Bartleman, which would include our amazing pre-K teachers in the statutory definition of instructional personnel. For years, our pre-K teachers have been left out of every bonus from the governor. every good thing that comes along for educators always leaves out our pre-K teachers, and our union has to go to the table and negotiate for equity for these teachers. And we are really pleased to see that this is moving along, and one of the good things coming out of the legislative session. Next slide. These are bills that we're watching closely. Some of them might not be going anywhere, fingers crossed, as we wait. The legislative session ends March 11th. So there's some bills we're just, as we call, monitor and influencing, and don't want to raise a huge fuss about because it seems like they might be at a standstill so far. The ones we are really concerned about, the last two, IEP meetings and recording them. It's not that we're not trying to be transparent, but as we see in this day and age, there's so much that can be manipulated with recordings and misconstrued, and parents have all the information they need at their fingertips, and we're just not fans of recording these meetings. The bottom bill, House Bill 1055, has gotten a lot of play in the media. I've been interviewed about it. Video cameras in public classrooms. Does not seem to be going anywhere. And if it did, it would not require school districts to install cameras. It would leave it as an option, of course, funded 100% on the district's tab. So it's something we would have to do. Again, our union is not in support of this at all. We are very concerned about students' privacy. And if a student is struggling with learning, struggling with issues at home, we don't want that on the video for somebody to misconstrue and misuse. Next screen, please. Lots of things we're against this legislative session, and I'll briefly go over these starting at the top. So Senate Bill 1458 and House Bill 1197. We are hoping this does not go anywhere in the Senate. That is what we're thinking so far. I went to Tallahassee myself to testify against this bill. What this does is it would remove our ability as teachers to have our union dues deducted from our paychecks. Right now, anyone who wants to be a member of our union, the St. John's Education Association, can just sign up on their pay stub, please take my dues out automatically, or they can pay ahead of time by cash. I mean, this is common with all unions, whether police, firefighters, corrections officers, but this bill singled out teachers and made us the only public sector union that would not be allowed to have our dues deducted through payroll. And what that would have created is then myself and my fellow officers would have to collect dues by check. And as you can imagine, people aren't interested in that. They don't really pay things by check anymore, or we'd have to create a Venmo type system. But this is solely aimed at educators and to try to silence our voice, to have a union, and carved out firefighters, corrections officers, police officers. It does not seem to be going anywhere, but we have been really speaking out against this bill. It has come up for 12 years in a row. And I get very animated about it because it's so focused on teachers, and the inequity of that is appalling and hard to believe. Next, we oppose 1203. We go back to the education bill. And again, I don't want to read these word for word to you. It's from Senator Diaz and Representative Federhoff. Right now, this wants to remove our ability to negotiate our teacher evaluations. We have been allowed to negotiate them. Our evaluations directly affect our pay, and they want to remove our ability to negotiate this. That is making progress, and they've attached it, as you can see, to something that everybody would want, which would have talking about teachers reporting sexual misconduct. So as I'm sure you're aware, the legislators like to tag something undesirable with something desirable. That way it's hard for people to vote against it. And that's what we're seeing with this bill. At the bottom, you'll see a bill that wants to modify our school board members, the salaries they make, and their term limits. Our union stands against this because we do believe in local control. Each of Florida's 67 districts should be able to decide how they want to elect and run their school boards. And this is just meddling in the local county's business. Next screen, please. Here we go with more bills that we oppose. Seems that way every year with the legislative session. At the top are some of the bills that you guys had on your agenda that I know are hot topics across the state, truly. The individual freedoms bill, the Don't Say Gay bill, and the banning of critical race theory, which isn't taught anyways in our school districts. As I said, these are hot topic bills. I stand opposed to them as the local president, as does our state union. And this has been playing out in a very emotional way in the Florida legislature. Next, please. Once again, we see bills here that local and state unions oppose. Top two have to do with school districts, reducing the salary for the school board members and imposing term limits. Term limits can be good. Sometimes they can be bad. It kind of depends on your individual opinion. But again, this comes down to wanting local control and letting St. Johns County, Duval County, Clay County run and manage their school boards the way they see fit for their constituents. Second one is of great concern, partisan elections for school board members. Right now, school board elections are nonpartisan. It's not Republican or Democrat. They're just simply running for school board. And we don't want party affiliation involved in this race. It shouldn't be involved. It should be absolutely nonpartisan, and keeping a close eye on this. The bottom bill we are concerned about, student assessments from Senator Manny Diaz. As many of you might be aware, the Florida Standards Assessment, or FSA, is gone this year. Everybody did a big hurrah about that. But what is replacing it is possibly more testing. So this bill deals with progress monitoring, which is the ongoing monitoring, small quizzes, tests to see how your students are doing. In no way, shape, or form is our union or any teacher against testing. It informs our instruction. It lets us know how to be better teachers. It lets us know what our students understand and what they need help with. But we are concerned that the removal of the FSA and the replacement of the progress monitoring is actually going to take up more instructional time throughout the school year. And there's so many unknowns as this bill moves forward and we inch toward the end of session. And just very concerned about the amount of time it's going to take away from that quality instruction with our students. And you'll see at the bottom a quote from Governor Desantis that this proposal would reduce testing by 75%. We are not seeing that so far. Next slide, please. Again, another set of bills that we oppose, and these all have to do with charter schools. As you know, the charter schools in the state of Florida take away funding from public schools. They're not all bad. I don't want to paint them with a broad brush, but generally they don't have the same accountability with testing and teacher certification that public schools have. And we are absolutely opposed to these because they can run unchecked, and it's money that should be going to the public schools, or the charter schools need to follow the same accountability rules that we do. Next slide, please. Again, some that we oppose, one with virtual learning and some higher ed bills. Senate Bill 520 and House Bill 703. I sat through some testimony regarding this bill in Tallahassee, and it's interesting. It does want to remove the search for, let's say, president of University of Florida or Florida State from the public's view, and wants to make whoever applies for these jobs make it public within 21 days of the final interview. And there was a lot of discussion about why are you taking this out of the sunshine? Why is this secret? Very interesting. I think that their argument that people won't apply for these president jobs at universities because they don't want their current bosses to know. It doesn't hold a lot of water, in my opinion, but that bill will probably go through. Okay, next slide. Now we come up on the budget. I will not read this to you word for word, but we are cautiously optimistic as a local and state union about the education budget that's coming through. It does promise to be one of the largest budgets we've seen in a long time. There's a difference between the House and Senate, and this is their one job, is to get together and pass a budget. So we will be monitoring this very closely over the next week. You'll notice that the House budget withholds $200 million from 12 districts with mask policies. The Senate budget does not. What we are looking for as a union is some flexibility within the teacher salary increases. Right now, the teacher salary money that we get from the state, 80% of it has to be spent on raising the base salary of a teacher to $47,500, which leaves just 20% for our veteran teachers, those with experience who have been in the district a while and helped those newer teachers. So that inequity has been a great challenge for us at the bargaining table. We're hopeful that with the new teacher salary funding, there'll be a more equitable split, say 50-50, 50% spent on raising the base for newer teachers, 50% for veterans. So again, watching this very closely. Overall, Florida is 43rd in per pupil funding, 48th in teacher pay, and at the very bottom for our support staff pay. So this budget is a step in the right direction. Again, cautiously optimistic. And a healthy budget is a good thing, but it comes with all those other not so good bills that we're keeping a close eye on. Next screen, please. Okay, so just inviting you to stay involved with the legislative session, www.feaweb.org. Please take a look at that website. And as I said before, it makes it so easy to stay on top of education issues and send a note to your representative or senator. I can tell you that at the end of the school year here, we're looking at 9,000 teacher vacancies in Florida. We have had over 200 plus resignations in St. Johns County alone this year. And I can tell you that teachers, our union members, call me every week. Michelle, I'm leaving. I'm giving my 2 weeks notice. I'm leaving at the end of the year. And with our rapidly growing county, I still think St. John's is still the fastest growing county in Florida. To check on that fact, but it's a great concern to me as president of who's going to fill these classrooms, who's going to drive the buses. We have a problem here in Florida. We have a problem nationwide, and it is partially because of pay, but another factor is the looming micromanagement from the session that we see coming in with these "don't say gay" bills and the possibility of videotaping. Teachers are leaving. They don't want their every word to be recorded, and they want to be treated like an adult and the professional that they are, and not have legislators breathing down their neck with every book they choose, every movie they show, and everything they say in the classroom. So I do think that's it for the PowerPoint presentation. And I'll entertain any questions you have or any concerns you want to share, talk about anything to do with education.
Hey, Michelle, this is Linnell. So your first
Hey.
question comes from Susan, and she just wanted to know if people could join the union as an ally, or was it a requirement that they be an employee or a teacher?
That's a fabulous question, and thank you for sharing your interest in supporting our union. You do have to be an employee of the St. Johns County School District. So we have two unions here, one for instructional staff, teachers, and another for our support staff, which is our paraprofessionals or teacher aides, custodians, bus drivers. But you do have to be an employee to be an active dues paying member. You can support us by speaking up, by coming to the union office. I'll give out our address. You guys are welcome to come by and talk about issues facing education. It is so important for us to have community allies who support public schools. And we were talking before this meeting started, and I would like all of you in attendance to know that when I go to Tallahassee, when I speak with our superintendent, I don't care what party anyone belongs to. I will talk to anyone about public education issues. I represent members with a wide variety of viewpoints, and I try to be as nonpartisan as possible, but very involved in politics. So even though you guys can't join our union because you might not be employed in the school district, there are so many other ways you can support us.
Okay, thank you. The next
You're
one comes
welcome.
from our member, Bobby Nord. And just said, wasn't the original idea behind charter schools that if they provided their way of teaching was good for students, it would be incorporated into the public school system? Whatever happened to that?
That's a good question. Whatever happened to that? That may very well have been the original idea. And there are some public charter schools in Duval that are under the umbrella of Duval County Public Schools and might have a specialty, STEM or science, art related. Charter schools have morphed in my time as president and here in Florida into entities that take public funding, can shut their doors at any time, do not have unions to represent their teachers, do not have to certify teachers in the same way, do not have to follow the FSA, even though that's gone, or other testing rules. And if the charter schools shut their doors one day and no school anymore, our county is left to absorb that building and the cost of it. So there's a lot of nefarious things associated with charter schools. It may have been the original idea. And again, they're not all bad. And the ones that operate under the auspices of a public school system do a lot of great things and focus on specialties. But the way it's changing through the legislature is really taking money from our students and public funding and pushing them toward an entity that does not have the same accountability measures.
Outstanding. I think the league shares your concerns in those areas. The next question actually comes from our Director of Education, Linda Mann. She said there are lots of problematic bills this year. What do you see as the greatest threat to our public schools today?
I think, thank you for that question, Linda. The lack of pay in Florida is obvious. So let's put that aside for a minute. It's not this profession is not paid the way it should be to attract professionals to education. The biggest threat right now is the bills like the Don't Say Gay and the restricting individual freedoms. And if someone feels offended because you are talking about slavery or the Holocaust, it's the micromanaging coming down on teachers. We are professionals. We have been educated to educate your children. We are supposed to be not telling them what to think, but how to think, how to be engaged citizens of the world and analytical thinkers. And now you have bill after bill, and some of them look like they will pass, where you just have this magnifying glass on you. And if I was in the classroom right now, I can tell you, I would be terrified to say the wrong thing, terrified of being sued, terrified of being secretly recorded. And this anxiety and fear is going to spill over to administrators as well. They're going to have to worry about all these things right now. So I think that is one of the main issues that is driving educators out of the classroom is, I know how to teach, let me teach. And everything that you want to know to everyone in the community is already out there. You can look up our standards. You have a say in the textbooks that are chosen. There is transparency. Let me teach with autonomy. Let me teach as a professional and stop micromanaging every word that comes out of my mouth. So I think that is, teachers are just saying, I'm done. I don't want to be put under this magnifying glass.
Very refreshing to hear you say that. And we echo that. And we hope that today's presentation might make its way in front of a legislature or legislator who has an opportunity to impact this. Our next question comes from Susan, also part of our education committee and who has done a lot of testifying in front of the Senate Education Committee. She said it's been confusing which bills apply to which publicly funded schools. Does HB 1557 apply to charter schools so those parents can file frivolous lawsuits?
That is an excellent question. I don't know 100%. I'm going to err on probably not. So, but let me find out for you and answer you appropriately. I know that they're absolutely targeted at public schools because I'm going to veer off a little bit. Make no mistake about it. These bills are aimed at shutting down public education, 100%. And that's not me talking about a conspiracy theory. They really want, some legislators, not all, some want to do away with public education and make everything private and charter to line their pocketbooks. I am not sure if that applies to charters, so I will find out and get back to you ASAP.
Thank you. And Michelle, the league, just to let you know, so we also are not anti-charter school. We are for all children having access to high quality education by professionals who are credentialed and trained to teach them in an environment that truly a child can flourish in.
Yes.
So we are also for transparency of all tax dollars spent on education, whether that be public, private, religious, or any other type of school. If you're getting a Florida tax dollar, we believe in transparency, oversight, and we do want qualified, certified teachers providing curriculum, real curriculum to our children out there. So just want to let you know we echo your thoughts there, and from your lips Absolutely. To a representative's ears.
Absolutely. And again, I don't want anyone to think that when I speak, I'm anti-charter school either. But the lack of accountability that the legislators are pushing through. And like you said, then our tax dollars are going there and they don't have to jump through all the hoops that we do. It's frustrating.
Yes. Our next question again this one comes from Laura, our speaker series director. She said, did Governor Desantis ever release the millions of PPE money that was designated for public schools?
I don't know if he's done that yet. And I'm sorry to say that I don't know. I know he was holding on to it. I think it's been released. I'll follow up on that as well. I know it's a holding on and I don't know why he was doing that, but I think it has been released.
The last I read, this is Laura, the last I read was that he was withholding like at least 200 million for those districts that were requiring masks earlier. And it's like, that's a lot of money.
Yes, yes, you are correct. Thank you, Laura. I'd like to say I'm up on everything, but sometimes there's so much going on in Tallahassee that I'm not.
That was a long list.
Yes, and then you saw in the House budget too, they want to withhold $12 million from, or 200 million from the districts that didn't follow the mask mandate, and the Senate doesn't have that. So thank you for clarification.
Yeah, so while we're waiting for our next question to come in, Michelle, I'll just ask. So the 80-20 split, it seems like superintendents and school boards would probably be the best advocates for where money needs to be applied, whether it's in recruiting in some areas, especially teachers with certain credentials and backgrounds, or retention in other areas. It just seems like that bill would have been more productive had they made a certain amount of money available to the districts based on size or some other formula, and had the school board and the superintendents really decide how to best invest that money in teacher retention or recruitment. Yes.
Amen. You took the words right out of my mouth. The funding has been decent last year, and it looks to be decent this year. What our struggle is, and what hurts us at the bargaining table, and the bargaining team is my fellow educators right out of the classroom. They're coming here today after school. We're negotiating tonight. Are those parameters that are placed on the funding. 80% of the funds must go to raise the base for newer teachers. Absolutely, we need to attract new teachers. But then you've left that 20% for the veterans who are sitting there. We're the mentors. We help keep these teachers in the classroom. Why wouldn't we get an equitable raise? So it handcuffs us at the bargaining table. And I have to wonder sometimes if the parameters that are put on these funds aren't to make people look at the union and say, well, you're not doing enough for me. We are trying our absolute best to make the funding equitable. It's frustrating what comes out of Tallahassee. Spend the money this way, spend it that way. And I will tell you, the conversations I've had with folks at the district, they find it to be frustrating too. They don't want to sit across from the table and then say all of this money has to go to new teachers. They've been really fair with us and responsive in a good way at the bargaining table. So I think that they feel the same frustrations. They might not be as vocal as we are, but they feel the same frustrations.
Did I understand you correctly in saying that 12 years in a row, someone has introduced legislation that requires union fees be paid directly and not be able to be deducted from payroll? Did I understand that correctly?
12 years in a row, bills have been filed to restrict our ability to function as a teachers union. Yes. Right now, it's still in place a decertification bill. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. Any teachers union that falls below 50% membership, gone, has to recertify, start from the ground up. So we have that. Police, fire, public corrections officers don't have the decertification. So every year, and it's generally Representative Plakin from Seminole, it's teachers, teachers, teachers. So we are hopeful that bill doesn't go anywhere in the Senate, but we are watchful every year. We think, what are they going to throw at us now to limit our voice and exclude all the other unions?
So if I understand, teachers are not in support of having video cameras in the classroom. They're also not in support of having their unions disbanded. They're also not in support of having, the pay. That would probably be more the administrators of how the pay is distinguished for recruiting and retention. And the legislature is trying to either make these partisan races for school boards, and also they're trying to take the pay away from school board members as well, I understand. So the word destabilization really does come into play here.
Yeah. Yes, it does. And yes, destabilization. And I think a desire by some, not all, but by some, to do away with public education and look at other avenues that could make them some money. We have a lot of champions in Tallahassee. We have a lot of champions. We stay in touch with them. And I have conversations with all lawmakers of both parties. And as I mentioned before, we've got to keep these topics at the forefront and on their priority list, because a public education is crucial to the success of our state.
Thank you. Jean, I see your hand. You can go ahead and unmute.
Thank you. I have unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, great. Thank you. I really appreciate conversation. And I do wonder, is there any role for protests, such as marching in the street? These are huge things that are on the table. And I hear the frustration of the teachers and of course ours as well with you. Is it a stupid idea or has it come up? I can't imagine that there wouldn't be a lot of support for people that are so frustrated to get out there.
Yeah, I believe that a well-organized, well-timed rally that supports public education is always welcome. I would love to work with you guys on that. We need to be strategic with our message. We need to have the right timing. We do have, I'll tell you, it's not just St. Johns County, but teachers all over the state of Florida can be very fearful about speaking up, very fearful, because as you may or may not be aware, there is an annual contract and teachers can be non-reappointed for any reason or no reason at all. So sometimes there's this fear about speaking up. But on the flip side, we see poll after poll that's done. Our state union just did one. The public really does support public education and public school teachers, and they know what challenges we've been through with the pandemic. So let's continue the conversation. I think with our negotiations, we're doing okay so far. Go back to the table tonight. But as session comes to a close, I'd really like to dive into that conversation in more detail with you, because I think if we keep the message unified, positive, and support of our students and our teachers, that would be a great thing.
Yeah, and to see how we can get rid of this fear thing, I found just horrific to hear.
It's baked in. I sometimes I worry it's too late with the fear, but always hopeful to turn it around. And there's a way to speak up that's always positive of the career of teaching and of students. And that's what we have to keep our focus on, because it is the best job I've ever had. It's the hardest job I've ever had, but the best job I ever had was with my pre-K kids and my first graders. And we need to get that message out there is support us and let us support your children.
Thanks very much. I
You're
hope you can, if it's necessary, get out
there.
there.
Let's keep that conversation alive and got to be strategic, but absolutely willing to work on that together.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Our next question comes from our member, Marianne Barnes, says, it seems that many of the proposed bills that your organization opposes are highly partisan and aim to push a conservative controlling agenda. It seems that the push is against unbiased inquiry in classrooms. Is this your perception?
It is definitely, you can look at the letters in front of their names and see where the bills are coming from. I believe it is absolutely on one side of the fence more than the other. I think it's backed by conservative think tanks that want to push a certain agenda. But I really do think a lot of these views are not how the majority of community stakeholders want our public schools to be run. I believe they want teachers to embrace analytical thought, embrace different viewpoints. We're not trying to indoctrinate anyone. We're trying to raise solid citizens and critical thinkers and get them on the academic or career path that they wish to go on. There's no denying looking at the bills. If you look at who puts them out there, absolutely. And it's something to take note of. I definitely, as a leader, struggle with that because it's hard not to get upset when you see it coming from one source, but you've just got to keep having those conversations And no permanent friends, no permanent enemies in Tallahassee. That's a saying I learned a long time ago, and it is very true. So no matter what side of the aisle a lawmaker's on, you just got to keep having those conversations and talking about how these bills are damaging our profession.
Thank you. Susan asked, when you use the term public school, do you mean the district-run schools?
Yes, the public schools of the state of Florida run by the 67 counties, and there are differences between, so I don't represent anyone in a private school, and we don't have any charter schools in St. Johns County. So that's what I'm referring to, yes.
Okay, and Laura Strickland asked, she said, teachers used to have tenure. Has it ever been suggested as a method to retain more teachers?
So tenure or professional services contract, PSC is referred to, is no longer allowed per Senate Bill 736, which came out in 2011. All teachers are now annual contract. I'm annual contract, even though I'm out of the classroom. And so what that means is, as annual contract, you are not guaranteed a job every year. You don't know what's going to happen to you the following school year. You could be non-reappointed for any reason or no reason at all. I will say that through the advocacy and work of our union, St. Johns County has made improvements since this bill came out. I used to fuss and yell at school board meetings, and it has gotten better. If a teacher is going to be non-reappointed, there is generally feedback in their evaluations, can have conversations. There's hopefully a reason that makes sense. I still don't agree with it whatsoever. I don't see tenure coming back in the near future, not with the current legislation. That is, they do not desire to see professional services contract anymore. And right now in St. Johns County, we have about 30% of our teachers have PSC and 70% are annual. And the difference is if you have a professional services contract, and it is referred to as tenure, it means you can't be let go without just cause. They truly have to follow the process if you've done something wrong. And there's some sense of stability there. And with annual contract, there's no stability.
Hey, Michelle, so this is Linnell, just my own thoughts, not from the chat.
Sure.
So I will tell you, I have the opportunity to speak with folks across different political spectrums and ideologies on a regular basis. And, you know, not everybody lives on the Florida channel, and not everyone is getting legislative updates. So it's very interesting that I will encounter my neighbors out walking the dog when I'm raking leaves or doing other things. I will talk to a stranger in the line at the grocery store. But it's interesting how many people are not aware of the things that our legislature is choosing to do. So it's very interesting that I don't encounter like thousands of people who tell me that they wrote a particular legislator and asked them to introduce a bill that creates a certain amount of harm. So when I find out who their legislator is and that they're not aware of what's going on, I do ask them to call their legislator and say, hey, we didn't ask for this. What's driving you to do this? Because you're right, there are a lot of entities that might persuade a legislator to introduce a bill or a particular group of people to get behind a bill.
Thank you for having those conversations. I try to have them all the time too, in the line at the grocery store, wherever it permits and wherever someone seems receptive to that kind of conversation. And I have them in a nonpartisan way. Did you know? Did you know? And if you're outside the world of education, people tend to not know quite as much as what's going on in Tallahassee. And if they love teachers and students the way I do, some of their jaw hits the floor. They're doing what? They're doing what? But it's hard in this busy world where everything's coming at you 24/7 via text, via social media, to stop and take the time to contact your legislator. But it is of the utmost importance. I find the whole process fascinating. There might be something wrong with me, but I love going to Tallahassee. I love speaking up and advocating and meeting with all the legislators there. And I try to impart that enthusiasm to people I meet in every walk of life. They can't turn around. Senator Hudson and Representative Stevenson can never turn around and say, Michelle Dillon didn't talk to me. She wasn't here with her teachers saying, we like this idea. We oppose this idea. And that's my goal, is that I was there, I talked to them, and they can't turn around and say that we didn't show up and be advocates for our fellow teachers.
All right, Michelle, that's it with our questions. I'll ask if you have any other closing comments for us before we delve into a little bit of league business.
I just want to thank you for this opportunity. It's a pleasure. I hope one day to join you in person. I like Zoom, but I like to see people face to face as well. And I appreciate you listening to me. And I hope you do follow up on the FEA website, www.feaweb.org. Can't say it enough how easy they make it to track issues facing education.
Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you.
So I just want to say, thanks for sharing your insight into this
Sure.
legislative session and to these individual bills, but also we really do encourage our members to continue to contact their legislators, as well as those who sit on the different committees who have the ability to pass or oppose or amend these bills, because the goal is to do the most good and to do the least harm. So,
Yes,
so thank you for joining us.
absolutely. You're welcome. My pleasure.
All right, I'm going to stop recording and I'm going to stop sharing on.